Good evening and welcome to this edition of In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. I'm Eric Marsh, Executive Director of Whitewater Community Television, and glad you're able to join us for this In Focus. By the time it's over, you may not be as happy as you are right now. We'll see what our guests have to say to us about what's going to happen to our roads and streets and things of that nature. A couple of years ago, probably almost 3 now, it seems like, we had a chance to speak with Bob Warner, Wayne County engineer, Greg Steins with the city of Richmond, and we were also speaking with Nathan Riggs, who was at that time with the state of Indiana. And we were talking about road construction projects, and we said that we were going to try to do that a couple of times a year. Okay, we failed. But we have a little time here since we got through our In Focus candidate forums early, and we've got those same 2 gentlemen along with T.O. Bosell, who is joining us, and we're going to find out about what events are being planned for this. We'll call them events. That makes it sound like it's more fun. How about that? More events that are being planned and what's going on as far as construction that may be happening as we get into the spring, to kind of give you a heads up on the roads. But want to take care of a little business to start off with. Obviously, we are still in full election season, and this Tuesday we will be here, but there is still time for you to get some voting done. So you can vote. Voter registration still going on through November 2nd, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. You can do that at the Coleman Center. Also, in-person absentee voting will continue through tomorrow, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. At the Coleman Center and at First English Lutheran Church, and then Election Day on Tuesday, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. at the Coleman Center, Mount Olive Baptist Church, First English Lutheran Church, First Baptist Church, and the Golay Center. A couple of things to remind you of about that. If you are living in Richmond and want to vote in the municipal election, but you happen to be over in Cambridge City on Election Day, you can vote at the Golay Center. And if you live in the western part of Richmond, if you're in Milton or Dublin where they have municipal elections, but you happen to be in Richmond on Election Day, you can actually vote at any of the vote centers here in Richmond. So they have made that possible. So if you happen to be on the other side of the county, we'll say, you can still cast your ballot. Also a reminder that voting a straight party ticket does not cover the at-large candidate. So you do still have to go in and vote for the at-large candidates, even if you are voting a straight party ticket. That was a change from the legislature a couple of years ago, and it's really just kind of kicking in on us. So a straight party vote does not cover the at-large races, and you still need to do that. And a reminder that we will be here on Tuesday evening for our election night coverage beginning at 6 p.m. Melissa Vance will join me. We'll be here live. We'll talk to candidates that you have not had a chance to hear from yet because they were uncontested in their races. We'll also maybe try to talk to some of the party chairs, and hopefully we'll have a chance to speak to some of the winners as who will be gathering here on the IU East campus. So join us Tuesday evening beginning at 6 p.m. live streaming on Facebook Live, also available on WGTV Online, and of course here on WGTV Channel 11. I want to welcome my guests in on today's show. Bob Warner, Wayne County engineer. Thanks for coming back.
Thank you, Eric.
Greg Steins, Director of Public Works and Engineering for the City of Richmond, and T.O. Bosell, Street Commissioner for the City of Richmond. Thank you all very much for spending part of your evening with us. We appreciate you doing that. We want to find out a little bit about each one of you to start, because people move in, people move out. The population isn't necessarily growing, but we don't have all of the same people here. You know, because you've been on the EDC board, you know that there have been some changes, some good things happening in the community. So give us a little bit of background about each one of you and how you came to your positions. We'll start with you, Bob.
Well, as Eric said, I am the Wayne County Highway Engineer. I started out of, college. I started working in Connorsville at an industrial facility down there as an engineer, but moved to Wayne County and have lived here since the early 80s. I've worked for a couple of industrial companies, a couple of consulting firms, and then about 10 or 12 years ago, I became the town manager of Hagerstown, and then 5 years ago, the county engineer's job opened up, so I decided to move over with the county and take that position, applied for it and got that position, I guess, is a better way to put it, and I've been working on as the county engineer ever since. The county engineer is responsible mainly for the bridges all across the county, in the cities and in rural areas. So that's the main focus of my job.
How many bridges are there in Wayne County?
We have 232 bridges on county roads and city roads and so forth. Then NDOT also has another 116 bridges on the interstate highway, US 40, all of the state and federal roads.
Doesn't seem like that many.
We have really 5 main rivers flowing north and south across the county, so every crossroads you've got a bridge.
Got them there. Okay. Greg, what about you?
I'm a native of Richmond. I graduated from Richmond High School in 1975 and then went on and graduated from Purdue University in 1979. I worked for a large contractor out west on oil and power projects for a number of years. Moved back to Richmond. Worked for a couple of factories as a supervisor, and then an opportunity came up in 1994 to work for the City of Richmond Engineering Department. So past engineer Bob Wee hired me. I became the Assistant City Engineer in 1996, and then I became the Director of Public Works and Engineering in 2006.
T.L.?
I'm also a native of Richmond. I graduated from Richmond High School, joined the Army, did my time in the Army, then came back to Richmond. I joined the Park Department, then moved up the ladder from there, became crew leader of the street tree crew. Then in 2012, I became street commissioner.
Okay. Now, a couple of you have worked outside of government. What's the difference for you between working in the private sector at what you do and working within the government sector in what you do? A lot of people would think the government sector or the private sector might be more lucrative, might offer you some better options. What have you found between the two?
Well, I mean, I would have to say, yes, it is more lucrative working in the private industry, and I think it's potentially easier to get things done. There aren't as many levels to go through, so to speak, to be able to get projects moving forward. So I think that's another thing that I see from private industry versus government.
The government is a little bit harder.
Yes.
In the paperwork and in the details to deal with.
Right.
What about you?
When I went to work for this large construction company, I was required to move wherever the project was. So being a hometown person, being raised that way, it got to be to the point that I didn't enjoy the moving. And so I looked for stability. I wasn't married yet and decided to move back to Richmond. Richmond's a great place to raise a family. And so luckily they were needing an engineer up at for the city. Mm-hmm. And so it's worked out for me. I've been with the city 25 years and raised my family. And so, again, you know, Richmond is a great place to raise a family. So.
Okay. Now, both of you, your jobs are appointed or you work underneath someone. T.L., your position is appointed by the mayor.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
So every time there's an election coming close, you kind of sit there and go, I wonder how this is going to work out.
I get a little nervous.
Get a little nervous. Any thoughts about, now you've worked for the city of Richmond for a long time, working your way through. You've probably seen a lot of changes in how things are done within your department?
Yes.
What kind of changes have you and your crew experienced over time?
The services have increased, you know. We do a lot more in-house, you know, services, leaf pickup. You know, the trees became, in 90 when I took over, you know, they had just started a tree program. So the services have really increased, you know, with different administrations. So.
When you say more in-house work, what are you talking about there?
Oh, well, we do a lot more paving, you know, a lot, like I said, the leaf pickup came around in the early 90s, I think. You know, when they used to burn, now we pick those up. Like I said, the tree program started. So we've just a lot more service
Were
based.
you and your crew responsible for the upgrade to the curbs and sidewalks, particularly as it came to making them ADA compliant?
Yes. Greg, the engineering department, really helped out. I mean, we've all worked together on that. And the administration, you know, we all had to step forward. It was a federal guideline that ADA had to be established. So we've worked probably over 15 years on just handicap ramps.
How has that project done? Is that project now complete? Because there was a timeline, and I'm not going to act like I know what that timeline was, but I think there was a timeline that the city was under that they needed to meet. Has that come and gone? Is that project wrapped up, or what still needs to be done?
Yeah, I think the timeline was 2018. We are completed. There are a few areas that need upgraded. But other than that, yes, the list has been complete.
Did you run into any major difficulties, like they changed the rules on you part of the way through or anything? You're nodding your head, yes. What happened?
Well, they changed design standards, NDOT does, as far as the, where like using truncated domes, where there needs to be ridges before the truncated domes. I think the slopes have pretty much stayed the same.
Yeah, slopes are pretty much.
But the problem we run into, you only have so much right of way, and to try to get some of the ramps in to be totally compliant, you'd have to go buy additional right of way, and there's just so many places. So we try to, of course, do the best we can and fit the ramps in. So it does make it easier for people that need the ramps throughout town, and they're used a lot. I mean, West Main, I see people going up and down the total length of West Main. So it's nice to see, very nice to see.
Yeah.
So
The work that you all have done as far as leaf pickup, how has that changed the thought or the mindset? Because that's something that, it's something that people really care about. It's something the sanitation department cares about. They don't want the leaves being washed down.
Right.
Is that a bigger pain than what it seems like?
It's a very, we use all our equipment to pick up leaves, so yes, it is very time consuming on our part. We really don't do anything else during leaf season except pick up leaves. So, but overall, I think it's a good program to have, you know. It really sets a tone for recycling and everything, so, which we've been doing for quite a while now, so.
You all have all been busy as over the last, 3 years or so there's been community crossings grants, or is it longer than that?
2016.
2016 is when the state started this, correct? Community crossings grants.
Yes.
Can you describe what that is and how that has affected the amount of work that you all have been able to do?
Well, the state did start the Community Crossings program in 2016, and counties it depends on the size of your community or county as to how much money you can get, how much you have to put in. It's for larger counties, it's a 50-50 match. So whatever you put in, the state will match up to 50% of that, and that's the same way for larger cities. For smaller, and that was the way it was for everyone the first year or two, but now they changed it to where smaller communities can put in at a 25% match and get 75%, again, up to $1 million maximum from the state. So that program for us has worked out very well. The first project that we did was a combined project with the city of Richmond, Wayne County, and the town of Centerville in getting funding to upgrade Gar Jackson Road.
Okay.
We each received a share of the funds for our various portions of that road, plus a little bit on Round Barn Road, and we're able to get that funding to help that project happen, to help Blue Buffalo and all of the businesses in the industrial park.
So when the application went in, because it was Wayne County, it was Richmond, it was Centerville, did each of you have to put in separate applications, or kind of was the application a combined effort?
Separate applications. So, Centerville had their application, the county, and then the city of Richmond. And we all had certain portions of the project that we had to keep track of. And so it was a great effort amongst the three communities working together to make this happen. So.
And even Richmond had 2 applications because each road
Right.
has to have its own application. And Centerville had 2 because we did some work on Centerville Road as well as Gar-Jackson Road. So there were 5 total applications for all the work
For
through
that,
there.
for that one project,
That one
basically.
project.
Yeah.
Wow. What's the kind of time that goes into creating those applications? An application like that where you've got multiple pieces on something. You had 2, Centerville had 2, you all had 1. What's the kind of time that goes into actually filling out the paperwork to get something like that done on an annual basis? Because this is annual now. It's once a year, twice a year?
Twice a year now.
Twice a year, community crossings are passed out. So what kind of time goes into actually, 1, deciding on the project, and 2, getting the paperwork in?
I think from the county, I mean, we look at it, we've tried to look at it from a couple of different viewpoints. One, trying to get potentially half of the money that we're eligible for to use for the roads and streets, and then half for the bridges is what we've looked at. So Mike Sharp is looking at it from his standpoint and what roads need paved or how he can use part of it that way. I look at it from the bridge standpoint. Then everything, obviously we have to talk to the commissioners and the council to make sure there's funding available and that they say, yes, that's a good project, let's move forward with it. Well, I think last year we looked at it, and the timing when they switched from 1 application period to 2 application periods isn't working out as well for the roads and streets. So Mike said, Bob, if you want to apply for all million, go ahead. That may work better for you this year. So that's what we did. We applied for 1 bridge in the January call and then for 3 bridges in the July call. And we were awarded $190,000 for the 1 bridge, which is the bridge on Teeter Road in Hagerstown, for that project. And then from the July call, we were awarded funding of $810,000 to make the whole $1 million. And the 3 projects are the bridge on West Eaton Pike, there by the Ohio line, that bridge. There's a bridge on Salisbury Road down by Vi Post. And then there's a bridge north of Economy on Economy Road. So those 3 projects, we're looking at getting bid this December and then starting construction next year.
Same thing with you all? Do you divide up how the money can be brought into the city?
Right. Well, the way it works with the city, Tracy Bosell and I work close together, identifying what roads are in the worst shape. We're required to use a system called the Pazar rating system, in which Tracy Bosell and his men go out and rate each section of road as far from a 1 to 10, with 10 being best and 1 being worst. And we try to look at roads that are in the 3 to 4 range that are still fixable by just milling and paving. That's the cheapest way to keep a road maintained and up to snuff. Okay. So early on, we work together identifying the roads. Then we have to identify the cost of each road, get an estimate together, and then we work together determining where the matching funds will come from. Yep. And a lot of the funds come from his budget, which is already approved.
Lucky you.
From LRS funds or MVH funds.
Funds.
Local road and street or motor vehicle highway funds.
Okay.
Which the state provides those.
And of course, it's a good deal for cities and counties because it provides, you get 100% more money back. So if you put in $1 million, you get $1 million. So it's a great program. These are projects, milling and paving projects that can happen right away within that year. Some of your federal highway fund projects can take 3 to 5 years before you even start turning dirt. So for instance, in 2019, we completed 15 roads. We received, in 19, $628,000 worth of state funds. So we were able to double that and do $1.2 million worth of roads this year. And I think people have recognized that. Roads like Warnley Road was in terrible shape.
I was going to say, that
Perfect
one
example.
we heard a lot about.
Yeah, and for instance, if it wasn't for those funds, it would be hard to do. So we're basically doing twice as many roads with the money that we did have, and now we have the state matching that money up to $1 million. And actually, over the last 3 years, we received money 3 out of 4 times. And when we applied our grants, the one year we didn't receive money because the state determined that if you already received money the first 2 times, they were trying to divide that money out to towns and counties that did not receive the money.
Okay.
So that's the only reason we didn't receive money on the 3rd application. So over the last over the 3 times that we did receive money, we received $2.1 million, and we're able to do $4.244 million worth of work since 2016.
You're watching In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. We're speaking with T.L. Bosell, who is Commissioner of Streets for the City of Richmond, Greg Steins, Director of Public Works and Engineering for the City of Richmond, and Bob Warner, who is Wayne County's engineer. We're going to come back to streets in a minute. We'll start with you here a little bit. Now, they were just talking about the ratings of streets, the scale that they use, 1 to 10. There's a rating for the bridges, I believe, that also kind of helps decide in which order repairs go, question mark?
That is one factor in the decision being made. There is a sufficiency rating. I'll back up. Every bridge in the country is to be inspected every 2 years.
Every 2 years?
Every 2 years.
Okay.
And a bridge is defined as a structure that is 20 feet or longer. So you may have a culvert that's 19 foot 10 inches that looks like a bridge, but it's not part of the bridge program. That's a bridge. No, it's not. It's not 20 feet. So
it's short.
It's short. So every bridge that is in Wayne County on the roads, like I say, in Richmond and Hagerstown, Centerville, or out in the county, is inspected every 2 years. If that bridge has any part that's rated as poor, then it's inspected annually, just to make sure there's no concerns. And that's what happened this year on North 24th Street. We had to close that bridge down because it was the off year for inspections, but because that bridge has some parts like the whole superstructure, which is the beams and supports underneath, it was rated poorly. And when they inspected it this year, they found that the rusting and so forth had grown to the point where it was no longer safe for, we could have rated it for like 2 or 3 tons, but you just can't go that low, essentially. So we had to close it. We have, that bridge is in the federal funding program to be replaced. We plan on bidding that in December of 2020, and construction will occur in 2021. So we have another year.
So it's going to be closed that long?
It's going to be closed that long. We have no recourse there.
Wow.
So, yes.
Okay, silly question, and I'm going to ask a few. You all know that. You've sat here with me. One would think that because you've now had to close it because of the poor condition, that it could somehow get moved up the list. It's that bad, but that's not the way this works.
Not typically with federal funding. We have already, as Greg mentioned, federal funding is out 3 to 5 years. We've already pulled it up 1 year because I knew it was bad in the beginning, so we've already talked to them about pulling it up 1 year, and we were already planning on doing that.
Okay.
Now that we've closed it, we looked at trying to get it pulled up 1 more year, but there are just so many steps that have to be gone through to follow all the correct environmental procedures, and they have to do those studies. We have to do right-of-way purchasing. We have to do utility studies and potentially moving utilities, and all those things still have to be done before we can do the actual construction. So we talked to them about trying to get it pulled up one more year, but there's just too many steps in there to make that work.
Okay.
So that's, yeah, I wish we could, but that's what happened there.
I don't live on that road. I do sometimes drive that way to and from. It's a great alternate route to a certain extent. But I'm sure for the people who live close to there, that's got to be disappointing, to say the least.
I wish I could do something about it.
Okay. So what's the rating system that's used on bridges?
Okay, getting back to the sufficiency rating. Depending on the structure itself, how good the structure is, and you've got abutments, which are the side walls of a bridge that hold up the structure, along with piers, which would be intermediate supports. That's part of it. Then there's the superstructure, which spans across the abutments and piers, and those are the beams, or it could be the slab, but the slab many times is on top of the superstructure, and then that's what you actually drive on, which is called the deck. So the deck, the superstructure, and the substructure, which is the abutments and so forth, are all given those ratings of excellent down to poor, or even closed is what the worst one would be.
Unusable.
Unusable. And sometimes some bridges have an asphalt covering over them. So then there's also the roadway surface itself that has a rating. There's a number of ratings. The stream or whatever you're going over has a certain rating. So there's a number of different ratings. Those factors go into the sufficiency rating. The ADT, which is the average daily traffic over the structure, is involved in there. So there are a number of factors then that go into that sufficiency rating. It goes from 0 to 100.
Okay.
And
0, I assume, being
zero
closed,
being
unusable.
Right.
Okay.
That would be the worst. And so, and I prepared a chart that shows the bridges in Wayne County starting from 5 years ago, about the time that I started.
Okay.
And it has, like, some of the worst one at that time was actually Peacock Road, which we replaced last year. And it had a sufficiency rating of 6.1.
It was close to being unusable.
It was not in good shape. That's why it was load rated, and that's what happens as that sufficiency rating gets lower. And again, a number of factors go into it, but then it will be posted so that, maybe posted down to 5 tons or something. Mm-hmm. But as you can see,
there were some low numbers there.
There were some low numbers there.
24.5. 30.8, 33. I mean, there were some bridges that.
And you can see the year that those bridges were built. I mean, those bridges were pushing 100 years old. Mm-hmm. And so, and then looking at this chart, you can see projects completed. There were 22 bridges 5 years ago that had sufficiency ratings under 50. And I'll step off the sufficiency rating again. 50 is the cutoff point where you can qualify for federal funding for a replacement bridge.
Okay.
So if you can go after federal funding on a bridge, you pay 20%, the federal government pays 80%.
Okay.
So, for larger structures.
We're getting some of our tax dollars back,
We're getting
basically.
some of our tax dollars back, exactly. So for larger structures, a $1 million, $2 million bridge, we're getting at least $800 to $1.6 million. If we wanted to replace a large structure over the gorge, it may be a $10 or $12 million bridge. Okay. So that's where those funds really help us to spread out the dollars that we have available and replace or rehabilitate some of the larger bridges. So in the past 5 years, we've been able to rehab or replace, in most cases, let's see, there were 16 bridges that we've replaced in the past 5 years. So we've been able to do 3 a year.
That you've completely replaced.
Either completely replaced, 2 of them, Turnpike Road in Hagerstown and Dale Avenue in Cambridge City. We saved the abutments and just replaced the superstructure.
Okay.
So, but most of these are complete replacements, yes. So we've worked our way through a lot of these, and then we're still working. I think there's another table there. We have a plan working on the upcoming bridges. You can see North 24th Street at the top of that list.
Okay.
And these were by the 2018 sufficiency ratings. So the green star on the side, those are bridges that we have already been awarded funding for that we plan to replace in the upcoming years. There are also, like the West Eaton Pike project, that's one we just received community crossings for, so it's next year, but some of the federally funded projects are out in 2024.
And you're looking at a couple there that are 2026.
And those are to Heine Road and Sample Road. There's a call for projects that starts in November, and we're applying then. I don't, we will have to get the funding to move those on to the list of projects we will actually do. And then you can see there's a blue star, and we've started engineering on them. For the Community Crossings program, those dollars are only for construction, the 50-50 match that you get from the state. So you have to have the engineering completed, utilities, right-of-way, all of those.
All of that falls on the municipality or the county.
Right. And the federal funded plans, those are all paid at 80-20. So
For all of the work.
for all the work,
engineering
everything. That's correct.
Okay.
So it's good if you can go after the federal funding, but it has its drawbacks because there's a lot more environmental work and things of that nature that have to be done on those jobs. So if you have a small bridge, it's probably not worth it for all the extra work in engineering and everything else to go after that funding. But I kind of set the bar at $1 million. If it's less than $1 million, I'm going to look strongly at community crossings. If it's over $1 million project, then I'll look at federal funding.
You're watching In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. I'm getting schooled. We're talking with Bob Warner, Wayne County engineer, Greg Steins, Director of Public Works and Engineering for the City of Richmond, T.L. Bosell, Street Commissioner for the City of Richmond. Appreciate you all being here. We're going to move on to them. You're scaring me. We'll come back. Let's talk a little bit about the city. He handles all of the bridges, whether it's in Richmond or out of Richmond, so you all are really dealing with street and road conditions. But there was a lot of that going on over the last few years. They said construction fatigue. One of the things I'm curious about, TL, as we head into the winter months, the new paving that went in on South A Street, where the city was kind of the guinea pig, I guess, for this new way of laying down the streets. How have you and your staff kind of looked at, because you all are going to have to come through and deal with some of that, right, when the snow falls, or no?
Actually, that's under NDOT.
That's under NDOT. So they come through and they handle that when the snow falls. You have no parts of that.
Yeah, we will pick up South A right there at 11th Street, but that's their right of way, US 40 right of way. So.
Okay. Do you all do any paving work for it? I've heard that they don't necessarily do it. There may be some contracts let out or something for some of that. Is that something that the city picks up any of? Or does the state actually handle?
They handle all their own.
They handle all of their own?
Anything under their jurisdiction, they usually do themselves.
When you're looking at winter weather coming in, what is the process for you and your staff? If you hear on Monday that by Thursday there may be snow, how does your week then begin to turn, and at what point do you go, okay, this is going to be a problem, I maybe need to change some scheduling, things of that nature? What are you looking at? What are you seeing?
Well, we're usually watching the weather very close like everybody else. And, sometimes it turns out the way they say, sometimes it doesn't. But we usually have, what we do, we have the city broke down into 10 sections. So I've got a big truck and a little truck in each section. So that's 20 drivers, 20 trucks. And then we play it by ear depending on how the weather is starting to break up. If, they're calling for an inch or less, I may call in 10 of the trucks. If it looks like it's going to be heavy, we'll start loading up plows on the trucks and everything, get the bigger trucks ready to go, and we'll have all the manpower on call ready to go.
As you are looking at this time of year, and it gets to be, I would think, a little bit interesting, you've kind of got your trucks and everything geared up for leaf collection.
Exactly.
The weather is turning, and it really could snow at any point in time. What does that do to you and your staff?
It's a little trying sometimes, especially when weather's coming. We do have the little trucks that will be set up for snow. The bigger trucks are all got leaf boxes on them and ready to go for leaf season. So usually we've been lucky. We haven't really had an October snow in probably 20 years that really amounted to anything. But we do have the little trucks ready to go at all times. The bigger trucks, like I said, if we do have a bigger snow, we'd have to...
Define a bigger snow. Are we talking 5 inches
Yeah,
more,
we're
7
talking
inches more? What's the
something
cutoff?
our little trucks couldn't handle, probably 4 inches or more,
Okay.
3 inches on a heavy snow. But
On a school day, and not trying to throw you under the bus, just trying to get people to understand.
Yeah.
On a school day, superintendents are out making their drive on roads 4:30 or
Right.
so, I think is the way it works. So they try to make that first call as to whether it's going to be a 2-hour delay or closing somewhere in that 5:15 or so neighborhood. I know, I get the phone call sometimes. When is your staff coming in? As they're out driving the roads, what's happening with you and your staff? And what's that overnight time look like for you all to be able to clean up? Or do you just kind of let it fall and then say, okay, 5 o'clock, we're going to go out, hit it and clear, or what works?
we usually will start clearing anytime it starts to snow, and then right around 11 o'clock in the evening, we'll kind of taper off, pull back, and then my crew will take a break, and then we'll come back in around 4 o'clock and start over again. The heavier snows, like I said, we may have to change schedules and just keep guys in, running the routes and everything. That happens maybe 2 or 3 times a year. But other than that, we'll usually cut out about 11 o'clock. The guys get tired, come back in around 4 and hit it again. And then usually if the superintendent calls, I can let them know that, yeah, we're out, hitting it. It looks pretty good or whatever, so.
What's the coordination between you and Mike Sharp at the county? Is there much conversation when the snow is flying between you all?
Not a whole lot. I mean, we both get the same information, I think, so we're both, he's got his guys that he's ready for him to go, and I've got mine, so unless there's really, like I said, in the past, when there's really been heavy snow, there'll be some working together to clear stuff off. But other than that, we'll hit us like West Eaton Pike where it ends, the city ends, and, the county takes over. We'll go all the way down as far as we can because there's nowhere to turn around and come back, and they'll do the same for us. So that's, But other than that, he's got his jurisdiction where he needs to take care of, and I've got mine.
You've got
so,
yours.
yeah.
Okay. Greg, as you're looking at what's going forward, we've talked a little bit about the community crossings money that everybody gets a little a piece of. What's the plan for the city going forward as far as how far ahead? And Bob has bridges on his little spreadsheet going, okay, 2026. How far ahead is it possible for the city to plan what road work they're going to do? A year, 2 years, 3 years? How is that worked out? And you talked about a rating system from 0 to 10. How many, is it asked, I guess, how many miles of road we have or whatever that are really in that low rating that you're seriously looking at knowing we have to do something with this in the next year, next 6 months even?
Yeah. Well, the inventory is kind of always in flux. Every year, Tracy has to go back and re-rate roads. So that
Every
we keep,
year?
Every
They're
year.
re-rated?
We are now. And this has to go through ITAP, through their review and approval, and that is used as part, that has to be included with our applications for community crossings projects. As far as the larger projects, the federal funded projects, those are usually roads, or are roads that are on what they call a functional classification list that the state has. Those are usually arterials and collector streets within the city. And those are the only streets that are actually eligible for federal funding, are the bigger thoroughfares in the city. So
Okay.
when we take a look at those types of projects, we just sit down with the administration at the time, talk it over, and we get estimates. Has to go through city council for review and approval as far as applying for the grant, and then of course the matching funds and selecting an engineering firm and all that. So usually those types of projects take 3 to 5 years by the time the funding is made available. And I think it's the same thing with the bridge projects. But so there, there's a lot to it to decide what needs to be done. And
So Wernley Road got screamed about a lot this year, and I was on it. I will say,
Sure.
it definitely needed to be done. It was one that I went on, and I went, okay, I'm not doing that one again for a while.
Yeah.
Much better.
Yeah.
What do we have now that you all are looking at as you're looking at the spring? You've probably got money, applied for money, received money.
Well, in January, there's another call for community crossings
Okay.
funds projects. We're actually working with Tracy right now. He's identified some roads. We usually work together and identify some roads. Again, he looks at the Pazar rating system, and like I said, this year we did 15 roads, 15 really good projects. The year before we did at least 10. West Main Street, north and south, northwest, southwest 13th or 18th Street, all over town. So we're just putting together the information we need, getting the roads that need to be done for next year. We have to get the estimates together, and so we're not going to know for sure until how many roads we can do, until we take a look at what the matching funds are going to be and how much Tracy has in his budget. And because we have to leave some for him and his crews.
Since it's your budget.
To, in-house, he does a lot of work paving in the subdivisions, the smaller roads. He also does sidewalks and curbs. They do a lot of work.
There's
for the
a
city.
lot of sidewalk projects that have been going on, in particular, I think, throughout the city. But talk a little bit about how that has been decided. I know the mayor has said there was a conversation, and because there wasn't a lot going on for a while, that there was a threshold for tripping or something along those lines that you all looked at. How has that work been able to continue to progress? You all obviously probably started with a list that continues to be updated. And can citizens reach out and go, hey, can you come look at this? Are you taking information from residents in that way?
Yes, we take call-ins all the time. We put them on a list. Most of the residents aren't too happy when I tell them, they may be 4 or 5 years out. We have done the trip hazards. We're working very hard on getting those taken care of. That was after the ADA ramps got done. Then we concentrate on the trip hazards. That's our next phase. What happens is we try to get to as many requests as we can. But usually when we go into a neighborhood, when people complain about their sidewalks, there are usually 5 or 6 other areas in that general area that need attention.
Sure.
So we really can't feel like we can walk away just doing one area. So we end up usually in a neighborhood for maybe a month or two, which, ends up, other people that have called in, with requests end up getting pushed farther down the list, because we're always finding worse sections that we need to take care of, or need to be addressed right away. So So it's not a perfect system, I know, but, you know, we need to take care of the main issues that we have.
Silly question. Are sidewalks rated the way bridges, streets are? I mean, is there something that when you go into a neighborhood and you start looking, are there certain things that you're looking for that kind of gets it a score that says, yeah, we need to tackle this now as opposed to moving to this other area and their phone calls?
Yeah, definitely the trip hazards are a 10 on our list. It's like a 1 to 10 list, like the Pazar system that we use. The trip hazards are number 1, especially the higher the trip hazard, a 4-inch trip hazard is 10 automatically, you know, and then we'll go down from 3-inch, 2-inch, 1-inch. You know, sometimes we've got a scarifier machine that we can go out and just grind the trip hazard down if it's an inch or inch and a half.
Okay.
Other areas, you know, is crumbling sidewalks and stuff like that. There's a lot of older sidewalks in town that we just haven't tackled in 15, 20 years because of the ADA ramp.
Growing trees, I imagine, have also been
Yeah.
an issue that you all have had to deal with, that roots have come up under the sidewalks and really kind of changed things.
Yeah.
Before we get out of here, and I think we're probably under about 15 minutes, I want to talk about a couple of things. One, the collaboration that needs to take place between your departments, because, and I'm sure we won't have the kind of construction like we had a couple of years ago where it almost seemed like everything was torn up at once. It wasn't, but it did kind of seem like that. So as you're looking at bridges that need to be done, as you're looking at roads that need to be done, as you get federal money for bridges or community crossings money, how much conversation actually takes place to say, hey, listen, 3 years from now, we're going to tear up this area and it would be a good time for you to do your work because it's going to be torn up anyway, or maybe we don't want to make things worse for people. How much conversation actually really does take place between you all?
I would say quite a bit. I mean, we talk about, like, when we're doing a bridge inside the city limits, you know, sidewalks on that bridge. Does the city want sidewalks, or, you know, things like that? A little bit more expanded, the bridge on 9th or on 27 Chester Boulevard.
I wasn't going to get to that one yet.
We just had a meeting with NDOT a couple of weeks ago to talk about that bridge. And, you know, the city was there, we were there, state was there, just to have the conversations about it, because it's coming.
Let's go ahead and talk about that. It's and this is the bridge over at Chester
Depot
Boulevard,
District.
over the bridge over the Depot District, basically, yes, is going to, and I don't want to overstate it, but it is going to be removed.
Yes.
And replace. I mean, there's a complete replacement going on there.
Yes.
Everybody's holding their head.
Yeah.
Starting when? And how long will it take? And what do we need to know?
Well, what, it's 2022?
2022, 2023.
Yes.
Okay.
period. And I think the plans are to try to get it done in one season, but you know, that'll be yet to be seen to see how things progress. A lot of times weather has a lot to do with whether schedules can be met or not, and so they've hired an engineering firm already. They're beginning the design, Parsons, I believe, and so of course they got to jump through the same hoops that we do with the environmental preliminary studies, meetings with the public, and all those things that's all in the early stages right now. So.
And this is not a project that's under your control. This is a state project.
That's correct.
So they're really in control of how this flies. What controls or what input does the county and the city have in that? I know you all are meeting with them. Is it they're telling you what's going on, or is there some type of input that the city and county both can have into that project, even to a point of what it looks like on the other side? Is there any of that possible?
I think at that meeting, some of those discussions were held, and the mayor was in the meeting too, and people agree we need to have public meetings, like Greg mentioned, and get the input from the public. You know, they're going to try to have those meetings early on to talk about it, you know, just like sidewalks and how, you know, the newer regulations, the road needs to be wider than it is now. So that makes it, but it's only got a limited access to, you know, it's right up against the one building.
Right, I was going to
now.
say, how do you make that wider?
So they're looking at possibly having a sidewalk on one side instead of both sides or something like that. And then, you know, then access to that and how that happens. So there's a lot of pieces, and it's still so early in design. They haven't answered those questions yet.
Okay.
But just, yeah, they're wanting to get input locally, which I really appreciate NDOT doing that.
Okay. We are about 7 minutes left before the end of the show. We were going to take a break, but you all were so entertaining, we didn't do that. So thank you very much. Before I let you go, you're all here. Normally I'm sitting here with notes, and the people sitting here don't have it. So when people have as many notes as I do, I feel much better. What haven't I asked you? What do you want the residents of Richmond and Wayne County to know about what each of you do, what projects are coming up, what haven't we touched on that when you said, oh, we're going to go talk to Eric, I need to make sure I mention this? What's not there?
The one I would like to say, you know, we're trying to stretch the tax dollars that we receive. And one of the things we're trying to do is on smaller bridges, the ones around 20 feet, instead of hiring the design firm and then hiring an outside contractor, we're trying to replace those bridges ourselves. We are replacing those bridges ourselves, and large culverts. We also are, and I mentioned there's a difference in bridges and culverts, but somebody still has to be responsible for those culverts.
Right.
So we're replacing those, and again, it's our own forces working out of the highway department. So Mike Sharp and I coordinate, and then his foremen go out and head up the project of replacing a culvert. So we're able to do that in about 3 weeks, really. We tear out the old, what looks like a bridge, but it's really a culvert, you know, and then get everything ready, and then set the new box culvert one day, and then fill in and pave over it. So I just want to call out to Mike's crew that they do a great job doing that, and I really appreciate that. And it saves $200,000-$300,000 locally because we're able to do that work ourselves instead of having to hire the design firm and then hire the contractor and so forth.
Okay. Anything?
Well, the Department of Public Works and Engineering is kind of a support department for some of the other departments within the city. Park Department, for instance, we've done over the years since I've been here and helped out a number of times. The latest project that we helped out on was the pickleball courts down at Clear Creek Park. I think it's been a big success.
Those are getting a lot of use.
People really enjoy it, and those are good projects, you know, that people like to see happen. So, you know, I hope that we can help in those situations as far as the parks and continue to do good things and get supportive people. I think, especially the parks, I think people want to have good parks. And so we're happy to contribute whatever we can. Tracy Bosell and his crew did a lot of work on the pickleball courts to make it happen, to make it affordable, that it could get done. The community, fundraising, the park supervisors and their people, they did work down there. So it was a great collaborative effort between the public and the city to make this happen. So I'd like to see more of that happen as far as the city goes, city forces and the public. So.
Tracy, what about you?
Leaf season starts Monday. We'll start picking up leaves full bore till December 6th. Want to thank all my guys for all their hard work this summer. I mean, all the projects that got done. Thank all the other administrative, you know, people, Greg and Joe at engineering, you know, Denise at the park. You know, we've all worked real well together. I like the camaraderie we've all got. We all working to make the city better. So
Leaf piles no more than how big?
2 foot. Hopefully, we want people to be able to see around them. We don't want any debris in them. If we break down, that just makes your leaf pickup slower. So
Leaves, no limbs.
no limbs, yeah.
Okay. And what's the secret to us being able to shovel out our driveways and not have them plowed back in? What's the secret to that?
There is no secret. Just wait till we go by and then do it.
I've tried that, and I've still had to go back out.
I've had to explain many times that our plows only go one way. And
I had to ask.
yeah, if we go to the left, it's going to go right back out in the street, and then we're going to have to push it all back. So.
Okay, I'll remember that. And on a serious note, how much room do we need to give your guys during the wintertime when they're spreading salt and things of that nature? What kind of leeway is comfortable, safe for them? What do they need to be able to see out of that truck?
They just need to be able to see you behind them. They need to be able to see you behind them. When you're coming up on the side of them, give them a little space, but especially don't be tailgating back behind them. They need to see you at least 100 foot behind them, just because the mirrors only go out so far on the trucks. And you know, if they can't see you behind them, if they have to back up or anything, you know,
Cool.
It's a blind spot. So.
Greatly appreciate that.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, I really do appreciate the time. T.L. Bosell, Street Commissioner for the City of Richmond, Greg Steins, Director of Public Works and Engineering for the City of Richmond, and Bob Warner, Wayne County Engineer. Thank you. I appreciate the time. I appreciate the knowledge. We are going to probably have you back in the spring after Community Crossings money comes out, so we can kind of start to put things on a map and figure out where we are and what we need to avoid. Thank you. Couple of things to remind you of. Voting is still going on. Please make sure that you get out and do vote. Election Day, Tuesday, November 5th, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., Coleman Center, Mount Olive Baptist Church, First English Lutheran Church, First Baptist Church, and the Golay Center in Cambridge City. Join us for our In Focus election special beginning at 6 p.m. on election night. Melissa Vance from the Wayne County Area Chamber of Commerce will be joining me as we speak to some of the folks in uncontested races, so you'll finally get a chance to hear from them. Replays of this In Focus program can be seen tonight at 10:30, tomorrow at 8 p.m., and also throughout the weekend. It will also be available on WGTV online, and the audio of this program is available on 1490 and 100.9 ESPN Radio and G1013 FM. We appreciate their support of this. Thank you very much for watching this edition of In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. I'm not quite sure what I'm wearing, but I think Ryan and I are going to go out and hit a couple of homes and do a little late trick-or-treating. So thank you very much for being with us. We'll be back next week with another edition of In Focus on WGTV Channel 11. I wish you well. Have a great weekend.